Gratitude isn't the reward, it's the doorway. Welcome back to The Uncomfortable Truth. I'm Renee, and today I want to talk about gratitude. Not the Pinterest version, not the just to be positive version, the real one. The one that a monk named David Steindl Rast put into a sentence that I think about more than almost any other line I've ever read. It's not the joy that makes us grateful, it's the gratitude that makes us joyful. Now, let's say that again. It's not the joy that makes us grateful, it's the gratitude that makes us joyful. Now, most of us have it backwards. We think that joy shows up first, life gets good, and then naturally gratitude follows. That's not what he's saying. He's saying gratitude comes first. It's the doorway. Joy is what walks through it. I want to show you what that actually looks like in a real person's life, not a quote on a mug. Then I want to break down why this is harder than it sounds and give you one specific thing to do about the second this episode ends. A year after the Eaton fire tore through Altadena, California, a journalist went back to check on his old neighborhood. 19 people had died. Thousands of homes were gone. Whole blocks were just foundations and ash. He talked to a woman named Jane Murphy. Her house didn't survive either. And here's what she said. Standing on a lot that used to be her home, she spent the time blessing the empty lots around her. She said it plainly, that she was deeply grateful that more people hadn't died, even while she was, in her words, very sad for the ones who did, grateful and grieving in the same sentence, not one after the other, at the same time. Then there's Alma Celio. She and her husband came back to their scorched property with a trailer before there was any plan to rebuild, before there was a blueprint or a permit or anything resembling good news. Standing near a big tree that was somehow leaping out again after the fire, she said something that stopped me cold. She felt grateful, actually, and at peace. Read the timeline there. Her house was gone. Her neighborhood was gone. 19 of her neighbors were dead. There was no resolution yet, no rebuild, no insurance check cleared, no happy ending, and she was already grateful. This is not a woman who waited for things to get good and then felt thankful. That's a woman who chose gratitude while she was standing in the wreckage, and the peace came after, not before. That's the whole quote, playing out in real time, in real ash, and on a real street in Altadena. Here's where I want to bring in on how I actually think about this, because the way I was trained to work with people, the way I look at any human beings who's struggling, start from one basic assumption. You don't wait for the conditions to be right before you decide who you are in the situation. We do this constantly with our own lives, though we tell ourselves, I'll be grateful when the relationship is stable, when the money shows up, when the diagnosis is different, or at least explained, when the job situation resolves. We treat gratitude like a prize you get for reaching a finish line instead of something that you can generate on purpose from wherever you're actually standing. Now that's backwards. And it's also disempowering if you really sit with it, because it means your emotional state is entirely at the mercy of your circumstances. Circumstances change on their own schedule, not yours. If gratitude only shows up after things resolve, you've handed the keys to your own well-being over to something you don't control. When I sit with a family who's genuinely in crisis, a kid without stable housing, a parent without resources, a system that hasn't shown up for them the way that it should have, I never ask them to pretend things are fine. That's not what this is. What I do ask is, what is already true right now that you can stand on? Not what will be true someday, what's already here. That's not toxic positivity. Actually, that's the opposite of it. Toxic positivity skips the hard part and jumps to the smile. What Jane Murphy and Alma Celio did is harder than that. They held the grief and the gratitude at the same time without letting either one cancel the other out. That's not spin, that's capacity. And that capacity isn't reserved for wildfire survivors. It's available to you right now in whatever mess you're standing in, the job you hate, the relationship you're not sure about, the body that isn't cooperating, the plan that fell apart. You don't need the mess to resolve first. You need to find what's already solid inside it. Now, here's the part that most people skip, and I want to name it directly because I think skipping it is why gratitude practice fails for so many people. The uncomfortable truth is this: if gratitude doesn't require good circumstances, then you no longer have an excuse. Sit with that for a second. because I mean it exactly as bluntly as it sounds. As long as you believe gratitude is something that arrives once life gets better, you get to keep waiting. You get to keep saying, I'll be different when. That's a comfortable place to live, even though it doesn't feel comfortable, because it means that nothing is actually required of you right now. The work gets postponed indefinitely, and postponed work never has to be done. But if Steindl Rast is right, if gratitude creates joy instead of the other way around, then the responsibility flips onto you today in your current unresolved situation. Not after the diagnosis makes sense, not after the money comes in, not after the apology, now. And that's a much less comfortable place to stand because it removes the excuse and hands you the agency instead. There's a second uncomfortable truth underneath that one. Gratitude practice only for the good stuff isn't actually gratitude, it's just relief. Relief is easy. Anyone can feel relief when things go well. What Alma Celio did, standing on a burned lot with no rebuild in sight, was something else entirely. She wasn't relieved. Nothing had resolved. She was grateful anyway, on purpose, before there was anything to be relieved about. That's the version of this practice that actually changes a life, not gratitude for outcomes. Gratitude as a stance you take before you know the outcome. So here's what I want you to do, and I want you to actually do it, not just nod along. Tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, before you go to sleep. Now, I want you to pick one thing in your life that is currently unresolved, messy, unfinished, not wrapped up with a bow, something you're still in the middle of. Then write down in one sentence what you can already be grateful for inside that mess. Not once it's fixed, not once it makes sense, but right now in its current, as it currently stands. Then say it out loud once to yourself, in the mirror, in your own voice, not in your head. That's the whole assignment. One unresolved situation, one sentence of gratitude that doesn't wait for resolution, said out loud once tonight. Don't overthink the sentence. It doesn't need to be profound. It just needs to be true, and it needs to be about something that hasn't been solved yet. That's the entire exercise. Now, that's the episode. Gratitude isn't the reward at the end of the story. It's what you bring into the middle of it while you're still standing in the wreckage before you know how any of it turns out. I'll see you next time. Now go say your sentence.